Great-grandpa Everett Harland Ormsbee moved to Colorado in about 1900. It was 1901 or something like that, maybe 1905. And he bought the property out there in Fruitvale, and that's where Dad was already, Goat Grandpa, or Irvin, was already a youngster. He was born in Nebraska, Litchfield, Nebraska. Great-grandpa was a very prominent citizen there in the around Grand Junction. They raised, when they first started raising fruit, they raised apples. And Dad, your father, as a little boy, even helped ride the horses when they were spraying fruit. And then the codling moth came in, and they had to pull all their apples and go on into pairs.
It all started about 1 a.m. on the 30th day of March, about 3 miles east of Grand Junction, Colorado, on the Seth McCarty place, at what would be about 2855 North Avenue, when a squealing child was born. He was named Harlan Frederick Ormsbee after his grandfather Everett Harland Ormsbee and his other grandfather Frederick Brown. I should know, as I was there. Believe it or not, that was the year that daylight savings started. Margarine was unheard of. A new Ford Auto cost $550, and a gallon of gas was 10 cents. Doctors made house calls then. Our refrigerator was a gunny sack that had one end of it hanging in water to keep it cool. Insulated clothing was unheard of, and cars were cranked by hand to start. It snowed a lot in Grand Junction when I was young. In fact, they tell me it snowed 3 feet on Thanksgiving Day, the year I was born. As my brother Merle and I were separated after my parents were divorced, I visited with my mother and Merle. I remember pretending to sleep when I had to take a nap so we could see the cinema. There was no sound in movies then, and Aunt Betty played the piano at one time in the Majestic Theater. I would stay with Grandpa and Grandma Ormsbee a lot while Dad was single and looking. In the winter, I recall Grandpa getting up in his long flannel nightgown to build a fire in the pot-bellied heater in the front room of the old house we eventually moved into. I do not remember my father marrying my stepmother, but I do remember our team of mules running away and the hook on the end of one of his single trees, cutting the back of one of the mule's legs. My future stepmother wanted to know if Dad wanted to call the wedding off, but he said no, he didn't. From Harlan Ormsbee's personal history.
Harlan went to school in Fruitvale and was on the football team. He was center and captain on the football team, even though he was quite small. He got a half scholarship from his football days. They didn't have the money to for the other half of the tuition because it was an expensive college. The first time I met him was in a tomato field when Daddy and Doris and Charles and Frank and I went out to help help Irvin plant his tomatoes. And Harlan was a young man in his 20s then, but he was small, and I wondered if he was just a small man or or if he was still a teenager. Then my first date with your dad was going to Fruta to take a load of beans. And then we started dating after that. We dated for about 9 months. Money was very scarce then, so once in a while we'd go to a movie. We were planning to be married in the fall, and he and his father had a misunderstanding. Dad wanted to Harlan to take some pigs to market, some little pigs in the back of his, in the turtle back of his 35 V8 Ford, and Harlan didn't want those stinking pigs in the back, and they argued about it, and Harlan got mad and came over to our place and camped out, and we decided as long as he wasn't going to live at home, well, we might as well start housekeeping, get married and start housekeeping. Harlan wanted to get married on my birthday, the 10th of June, but I didn't want my birthday and my anniversary to be the same day. I wanted two separate celebrations, so we chose June 4th to be married. And the day before that, Grandma Nanny Bidwell Urban came to Grand Junction. Surprised us. We didn't even know she was coming. We were married at Uncle Art's and Aunt Alda's. We were married on their front porch, and our branch president, President Gardner, married us. Our wedding night, we slept in a camp bed that Mother and Dad had bought when we left Tracy, California, and it was out under a cottonwood tree in the yard there at Mother's and Dad's. And then the next day we did a little shopping, bought some things to go up towards Gateway, and we camped out. And it rained and rained and rained. We spent most of the time in the car because our bedding got wet, and we tried to make a bed in the turtle back of this 35 V8, and we hung our bedding on a barbed wire fence, and it was very difficult to get it off of the brush and the fence. Never did dry out. We finally give up. One of our first misunderstandings in our marriage was Harlan wanted cream salmon. He loved cream salmon. And I said, well, I've never made cream salmon, but I've made other cream things, like creamed asparagus and stuff like that. And I said, I'll try. But I don't like white sauce very well, not the kind that you just put a thickening in milk, because it tastes like paste to me. So I heated the butter enough to cook the flour just slightly. And then I put the milk in it and made kind of a gravy and put the salmon in it. And he says, that's not the way Mother made cream salmon. And I said, well, I'll have to ask her someday how she made it. But I said, it'll be okay. And I put it on the table with a vegetable or something. And your dad, instead of putting some on his toast or biscuits, I guess we had biscuits, he reached over and picked up a spoonful of cream salmon. He said, no, it doesn't taste like Mother's. And I took offense by it. And so I picked up the bowl of cream salmon and threw it out the door, and I never made cream salmon again for years and years. We weren't married too long till I discovered I was pregnant and started that morning sickness, which was awful. I didn't realize that you could have a baby in less than 9 months. I just thought 9 months was it. And so I didn't think I was in labor, and I was in labor 3 days before I went to the doctor. He was born in December 13th, and he lived 4 days. He weighed 1.5 pounds, and they didn't have they had a warm crib that they called an incubator, but that's all it was just an open crib that was warmed, and they were playing Christmas carols over the radio, and I just had a feeling that last day, on the 4th day, that maybe he wasn't supposed to live. And that afternoon at 3 o'clock, I just prayed, well, if he isn't, if it isn't meant to live, if he's suffering and he isn't supposed to live, please don't let him suffer anymore, just take him. And he went immediately, they said, at 3 o'clock. And unbeknown to me at that time, Harland had give him up to about 2 years after he had died. I was saying my prayers one night, and I was feeling real blue about losing the baby. A voice came into my mind that I hadn't lost my baby. To me, he was lost. And he said, the voice said to me that he was still mine, that I hadn't lost him at all. Then I became pregnant again, and after Harlan was born, and died, and I lost that baby at 3 months. I was lucky to have 6 children because at that time they didn't know anything about Rh negative, the Rh factor in your blood, and I have A negative. I was in bed a lot of the time with Patty to keep from losing her, but I carried her almost full term. And Donna, I tried to lose her at 3 months and 6 months, but I had 3 boys and 3 girls. Harlan wasn't a member of the church when I married him, but he said he would investigate the church, and so I was naive enough to believe that no one could investigate the church without seeing the truth of it. We went to Sunday school one time, and they were studying, the lesson was on President Grant. And so when we got ready to leave, the missionaries came up, shook hands with him, and asked him any questions they could answer, that they were glad to have him there. And he said, well, yes. He said, I'm not interested in President Grant. He said, I'd just like you to prove to me that the church is the true church of Jesus Christ. And missionaries said, well, that was a tall order, but they do their best. He was baptized in August of 1946. He went to church when he was in as much as possible, but he kind of got discouraged. President Perry asked him, just come right out and ask him why he wasn't more active. And he said, well, one thing is, there doesn't seem to be much point in it. I want to be sealed to my family. And he says, I can't attend church enough to become an elder, and because I'm gone on the road so much. Even if I don't work on Sunday, I might be at the other end, you know. And President Perry said, well, I will make you a promise that if you will attend all your meetings when you're in town, all the meetings that you can when you're in town, by summertime, we wanted to go to the temple in June. He said, I'll see that you become an elder. We were sealed in 1953 with all you 5 children. We were sealed in the Salt Lake Temple, and I was impressed with the stained glass windows in the ceiling room that, or the picture, it was stained glass of Joseph Smith, and that was a ceiling room that we were sealed in. When Ed was just a little fellow, I think it was about 1953, we moved to Utah. That is where Karen started to school. Ed had, the miners lived across the street. They had a dairy, and Ed become very good friends with Butch Miner. Karen, that got mumps, and she gave the mumps to her dad, and I think Jim, yes, Jim got the mumps also. And every morning Ed would wake up and look in the mirror and be real upset because he didn't have the mumps. His jaws weren't swollen. When we first moved back to Colorado, we rented a rock house on Redlands. We visited great-grandpa quite often because he was a widower at that time. And he asked us, he was lonely, and he asked us if we'd come and live the summer with him. We fixed up the house, repainted it, and, on the inside and outside. We had a neighbor that was a painter, and he came in and Grandpa had him paint the inside of the house. When it was getting close to time for the children to start school, we started looking for a place to buy. And Grandpa said, "Aren't you happy here?" And we said, "Sure." We really did enjoy it there with Grandpa. He was a great guy. there were a lot of pretty flowers that we were able to keep along the side of the house, that and rose bushes that great grandma Edith had planted. She liked to garden too, and she had everything imaginable in that yard when we moved, but it had rather gone wild. The grass was so tall when we moved there in that front yard that it couldn't be mowed successfully. Living on the farm, that was I think that you kids just really enjoyed that. You'd climb around in the barn, and there were trees. There was a tire swing hanging from one of them. You had rabbits. We had chickens. We had doves. No, pigeons. You like to run through the orchard. Family outings were picnics and camping, and our vacations were camping. We used to go up to Devil's Kitchen and Rimrock Drive and Grand Mesa, and we did a lot of short trips and around there. And we would go through the lemon squeezers and climb the rocks and mountainside around there, and we would build bonfires and roast weenies and marshmallows and well, Grandma Dennis, both Grandma Dennis, Grandma Brown, the Nelsons, and my mother and father all went to the duck pond one time. And at this time, I believe the duck pond had been filled in and made into a park. Your favorite place to go vacationing was Mesa Verde. You kids loved to climb around in those ruins, and at that time you were allowed to climb around in the ruins. Now you can't. They have a barrier there that you can only go so far. And I think we went 2 or 3 times there on vacations. One of our vacations was in Yellowstone. This was also Grandma Dennis's treat to stay at a lodge there. And we all had housing in this lodge. One of the things highlights I thought was driving through the park and the bears getting in the way and stopping to watch the bears. And one of the bears stuck her nose. It was she had cubs, and she stuck her nose in the car. And on Grandma Dennis's side, we were going to stay longer after touring through the springs, the hot springs and the geysers and everything. We were going over to West Yellowstone and stay longer and just camp out there after the rest of the family had gone home. But Mary Lou and Shirley wanted to stop in Grand Junction and visit us a while at the farm. So we left early, and we hadn't any more than got out of the park, it seemed, and we would have been camped there when the earthquake hit, and it did a lot of destruction there where we would have camped. In fact, people were killed. Anyway, we stopped in Casper, Wyoming, where Frank lived, on the way up there, and Frank helped Daddy fix the carrier that was on top of the car because it gouged scratches on the car, and it was a brand new car, and we were real upset about that. But that was a fun trip. One of our camping trips was to Bryce Canyon, and it was in June, and the first cold morning that we got up, and it was cold. I don't know why in June it would be so cold, but it was. And we went to the information or the museum part of the park, and there was a little ground squirrel that apparently looked dead on the sidewalk. And Jim picked it up and said he wanted to take it home. And in the warmth of the car, this little ground squirrel or chipmunk, all at once it got warm and came to life. And it jumped up and run around on the floor under you kids' feet and under the seat, and ran up front and dropped dead again. Another time we went to Grand Canyon, and on the way, it was a gorgeous vacation. It was warm. We went by way of Lake Powell, and Jim was just enthralled with this. They were building the dam at the time, and he wanted to stay there and watch them, these big buckets of cement they were bringing up on derricks and then dumping into the dam itself, I suppose. Another experience on the way out to Disneyland, we stopped at a ghost town, and the road, alongside the road looked pretty solid, the ground did, but we got stuck in the sand. Harlan got real upset about not being able to get out of the sand, and Jim said, "Well, I think I've got it figured out." And his dad said, "Oh, you kids, something about you kids didn't know anything about getting unstuck in sand." And we had some boards, blocks in the car for leveling the trailer. And so Jim got these here pieces of board out of the trailer in the back of the car and put in front of the wheels, and we did get out. But the kids Jim and Patty got their contacts full of sand, and that wasn't very good. Plateau Creek came from the mountains up beyond Colburn. There was a swimming hole up Plateau Creek. It was more like a small river at times. But this particular spot, we used to dive off or jump off the rocks and into this swimming hole. And Sweet Flats, and it was a good place to camp and to fish. We'd walk up the creek, but we loved to fish in this creek. It was a creek up there, not nearly as big a stream, as it went further up into the mountainous area. After the children left, and Harlan started having a lot of trouble keeping his food down. His kidneys at that time were failing, but the doctor didn't catch it. By the time they discovered that he was going into kidney failure, it was just too late to do anything about it. He was so sick that he did have to quit. They gave him early retirement. He had worked over 35 years, and so he had to take a medical retirement. For a while, he went into the hospital to be dialyzed. They had a dialysis center there. And he would just come home just washed out. He didn't feel good, and he always had a bad headache. Harlan found out that there was a dialysis program where they trained someone in the family or in the home to do the dialyzing. They furnished the machine, and he wanted me to dialyze him, and I said, no way. I didn't want to learn, and I didn't want that responsibility either. I was afraid of it. We decided to dialyze at home, and Brian set up the a room where we could, or the plumbing and everything, so that we could dialyze him at home. And learning to dialyze him was real easy and very interesting to me. You know, the thing about that I remember about his dialysis more than anything, and his kidney failure, is that he did not complain about the dialysis, and I know it was hard on him. He didn't say, why me, you know. He did, we dialyzed him the rest of that 11 years, and then he received a kidney transplant. We were extremely more mobile then, and he felt good. He enjoyed working in our little yard. He loved the roses and just liked to work in it. One other thing that I can think of right now that really has been a highlight in my life, and that is the family reunions and the get-togethers we've had. We always had Thanksgiving together, as many of the family as could get around, and quite often, or most of the time, they were at my house because I had a bigger table. And one time we had a Thanksgiving dinner at Charles and Naola's in their basement. One time we had I had had back surgery not too long before Thanksgiving, and Patty and Donna, and I'm sure that you boys did your share too because you were good cooks. But you kids did Thanksgiving dinner all by yourself. Harlan, when he got interested in genealogy, he got very interested in family home evenings and reunions, family reunions. But our first reunion was in the early 80s. And it wasn't a family reunion with officers and minutes and things like that, but we went up in Provo Canyon, and Dad Ormsbee and Golda were there. I can remember some of the things, some of the fun we had at the reunions, water fights. The kids had skits, and that was a lot of fun. Granite Flat, I think, was the one that I remember the most as far as skits were concerned. Monte Carlo, I think it was. Yeah, Monte Carlo. We went up there twice. And you guys came up when it rained and it was cold when Jim had it. It was cold and raining, and we really did get, it was kind of miserable.
This is the way we wash the tables, wash the
No, it
tables.
isn't. That's the way you wave it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna go get that.
Yay!
You're not eating any candy, are you?
Fast as you can get it in.
Guy got candy. Candy. Orange?
What'd you say?
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay.
All right.
There she goes.
She's gonna bite the big one here in a minute.
Oh, Grandma got you. Watch Maddie.
Maddie, go.
Okay, we're ready.
Cell phone that actually has service up there?
Mine and my dad. Ryan?
Oh, cool.
What do we want to call you? Girlfriend. It's right here. Jonathan's girlfriend. No.
English? Yeah. Are you sleeping? 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 Coffee over to Heather. You're gonna come sit with me? And me over to Sheila. Rock to my soul in the bosom of Abraham. Rock to my soul in the bosom of Abraham. Rock to my soul in the bosom of Abraham. Oh, rock to my soul. Second verse. Chitty chitty chat. Chitty chitty bang bang. Stuck in my what? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Elbows back. Elbows back. Head to the side. Head to the side. Chitty chat. Chitty chat. Chitty chat. Chitty chat. Chitty chat. Chitty chat.
We went up to Bear Creek or Bear Camp, about halfway between Nephi and Mount Fountain Green. And it was the most beautiful place. It was in a basin, almost like a bowl. And there was a hillside that the kids just had a ball climbing. The little kids were just so covered with dirt and stuff, but we didn't care. We just let them climb up and down these roots that were sticking out from trees, and they all of the vegetation was gone from this, from the children, not only ours but others that had went up and down this steep hill playing. They played baseball. Jim had to move his tent because the camp director said it was in some other camp. It rained one time. The wind blew quite a bit, but the scenery was, and the creek was dry, but the scenery, the mountains around were just gorgeous. I personally would like to go there again. I think that's cruel.
Whose glasses is Marissa breaking?
At my house, for Pete's sake.
How are you gonna get that red dirt out of there?
Red dirt, it's brown.
One of the highlights of my life right now is visiting my family. For instance, the trips that I make to Oregon so that I can see the Ed and Barb and Maddie. Dick and I go over to Grand Junction, Colorado quite often to see Charles and Naola, Frank, and Anita. And it's difficult for us to go and spend even a night sometimes. So what we do is, and it's easier for Charles and Frank too, we meet in Green River and have lunch together. And then we go to there's a museum. There's a big table in, I guess it's kind of a conference area with comfortable chairs around it. And we all sit around this table and just have a good visit. I've been blessed with a great posterity. They have all been extremely respectful and loving to me, and I just don't know how I could be blessed more than I am with my family. I have 6 children, 5 we've raised, 29 grandchildren, and with the great-grandchildren it's getting very close to 90 descendants, including the spouses. But the thing that I can't hardly explain in any other way than to know that I'm at peace. I'm happy. I feel no anxiety about what turn that my life might take, because I know that I'm being watched over. I can't think of any blessings or anything that I've been blessed with more than my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I mean, that I think I've got the greatest family in the world.